Well, like anything in soccer, it's inevitable that changes will happen, and particularly with coaches. Sigi Schmid had a tremendous run with the Sounders, the only coach in their short but illustrious history, and it just broke down in the end. I think there were a few close shaves for Sigi Schmid with regards to staying as coach in previous seasons. You think back to that run in the middle of last year where it all fell apart, but the club showed faith. I think at this point they realised they had to act to save their season, that maybe Sigi Schmid had taken them as far as he could and they were looking to take a different direction. But of course you remember the great times that Sigi Schmid had with the club, all the Open Cup successes, making the playoffs in the first season, which was a big feat. He was a real success with Seattle, but inevitably things have to change. Well, Brian Schmetzer, rather like Zach Scott on the field, is Mr. Sounder off the field for Seattle Sounders FC. What a great history he has, and an identity with the Sounders, and I think no one else could possibly have. Being a player coming through in the 80s, watching and learning from the NASL days as a youngster, and then becoming a coach alongside Sigi Schmid, working under him. He's a real X's and O's guy. He understands the finer tactical points of the game, and I think he's been ready and willing and waiting to step up to this challenge, and I think he'll be a success. Whether they remove the interim tag, well, for my money, I hope they do, because Brian Schmetzer deserves a chance. He came close to moving to Montreal in 2012 when he had an interview for their job as an expansion franchise. He knows the game very importantly, and I think you've seen this on the field. He has the respect of the Sounders locker room, and that counts for a lot, and I think Brian Schmetzer could be a neat choice to keep the Sounders playoff traditions going. Well, the addition of Nicolas Lodeiro has been a sight for sore eyes. He is the real deal, and he's a joy to watch. You've seen how he contributes in assists, and the odd very timely goal, that equaliser late on at Houston, was absolutely clutch. And that is a guy that has quality coursing through his veins and is a real potential game changer. How Seattle needed a guy like him. A different dynamic to the likes of Obafemi Martins, as more of a creator rather than a forward or a finisher. But if you have the right players in front of him, then things can happen. He certainly made Jordan Morris a better player. It's a real shame that Clint Dempsey is out with his health-related issues. Otherwise, that could have been a triumvirate to savour. But still, Lodeiro on the field gives Seattle an opportunity. Well, I think I said probably back in the spring, looking at the early results, they weren't going to make the playoffs. At the moment, that's bearing out. Of course, everybody in Seattle wants them to make the playoffs, and I'm no different. But 5 points to make up with 6 games to go is going to be tricky, particularly when one of your playoff rivals is Portland Timbers, your greatest rivals. Whether they can catch them, well, they've got favourable games. If you look at it beyond this LA match at the weekend, they play Vancouver away, having just beaten them and could have beaten them by more. You've got the likes of Houston Dynamo still to come. Real Salt Lake, who are decent, but Seattle have been able to get it done against them recently. I think it will be very tight. Without the addition of Lodeiro, it was a definite no-no for me for making the playoffs, but they have games in hand where there's points still on the table with a favourable schedule. Chicago at home in a midweek match too. There is still hope, and Sounders fans should have reason to believe.